Hey, John Crestani here. Hope everyone can hear me all right. We have a goodie today. This is actually probably my favorite interview of all time. As you guys know, I really like listening to like real, raw knowledge from very successful people. And we're going to be going over Steve Jobs, his lost interview today. And again, folks, I think this is the best interview of all time. So we're gonna take a little bit of our time going through this and sort of understanding what are known as the wilderness years of Steve Jobs. Um, Now, one of his famous quotes is that the computer is like the bicycle for the mind and that it enables us and we have to utilize it correctly. Now, Steve Jobs is a dynamo. I'm not going to spend too much time going into him, but we'll let him speak for himself. I prepared or my AI prepared some information on this page. Let's go into his interview, the lost interview from 1995.
When I was 12, I called up Bill Hewlett, who lived in Hewlett-Packard at the time. And again, this dates me, but there was no such thing as an unlisted telephone number then, so I could just look in the book and looked his name up. And he answered the phone, and I said, "Hi, my name's Steve Jobs. You don't know me, but I'm 12 years old, and I'm building a frequency counter, and I'd like some spare parts." And so he talked to me for about 20 minutes. I'll never forget it as long as I live. And he gave me the parts, but he also gave me a job working in Hewlett-Packard that summer. And I was 12 years old. And that really made a remarkable influence on me. Hewlett-Packard was really the only company I'd ever seen in my life at that age. And it.
Now, I just want to bring up the audacity, the absolute audacity of Steve Jobs when he was 12 years old calling up Bill Hewlett. Now, I'm assuming most of y'all are like, who's Bill Hewlett? Right, Hewlett Packard, HP. At the time, just to give you a comparison, Bill Hewlett in the mid 90s, right? Bill Hewlett was one of America's wealthiest individuals, worth over $3 billion. Now, Steve Jobs was a 12-year-old calling up one of the richest men in the world. Fascinating, right? What 12-year-old gets it through his head that he can call up a billionaire and actually ask them for free stuff? So which is crazy, but it shows you the view of how Steve Jobs views himself. He doesn't view himself as somebody that can't talk to a billionaire, right? Or even ask a billionaire. The way Steve Jobs looks at himself is a citizen of the world. He isn't looking at people as better or worse than him. And he's literally asking this guy for free stuff. And he ends up getting a job at 12 years old in Hewlett Packard. This is how success is made, right? So let's go on to his next thing. I just love that quote. Let's go on to the next.
And you might ask, well, what's so interesting about that? What's so interesting is that we were young, and what we learned was that we could build something ourselves that could control billions of dollars worth of infrastructure in the world. That was what we learned, was that us two, we didn't know much, we could build a little thing that could control a giant thing. And that was an incredible lesson. I don't think there would have ever been an Apple computer had there not been blue boxing.
Now, what is blue boxing? So first off, to give a little context around this, Steve Jobs is referring to the blue box, which is a hacker. It's a way to hack phones, right? Back in blue box. It's called phreaking, okay? And this is kind of what the blue box was. It was a little, let's see if I can get a bigger photo here. Sorry, folks. But you see about what a blue box is. It's a way to get free phone calling from any phone you want. And the way it worked is simply it would emit a little bit of it the speaker would emit sounds to the phone. And because the way phones were constructed back in the day was made so that it was all sound based programming. You know, if you remember the dial up connection, right, that sound was actually coding, telling your computer how to connect to the internet. So Steve Jobs realized early on that he could control the world's infrastructure, billions of dollars of hardware with a little bitty box. That's what computers allow us to do. And everyone here, right? Imagine if you went through life understanding that you too could control billions of dollars of infrastructure. And that's that's what I'm trying to build myself, right, with Bonfire Terminal. And I've been in the cave, folks. I'm not going to spend too much time plugging it, but I have been in the cave building the next version of AI for home use, right? And I'm going to be talking about that more, but you can see what the future is in on our website. Let's go on to the next. Let's go on to the next clip. This is hilarious. He called the Pope. So Steve took this idea of the connection to the rest of the world and to the next level. He literally had no limits in his mind, and I think in reality.
Yeah, we did call the Pope. He pretended to be Henry Kissinger. And we got the number of the Vatican, and we called the Pope, and they started waking people up in the hierarchy, I don't know, cardinals and this and that. And they actually sent someone to wake up the Pope. When finally we just burst out laughing, and they realized that we weren't Henry Kissinger. And so we never got to talk to the Pope, but it was very...
I just love the insane worldview of Steve Jobs. Okay, let's go on to the next one. This is a very interesting quote because I remember going through the corporate world and seeing just how much stuff didn't make sense. And people never questioned what the processes, the pipelines, the playbooks were. The corporate world is efficient and it works well and it pays well, but at the same time, being able to break out of what's the way things have always been done, I found has been a monster opportunity. And this is a great quote, and I think this is very telling, especially for anybody who's worked in corporate.
Throughout the years in business, I found something, which was I'd always ask why you do things. And the answers you invariably get are, oh, that's just the way it's done. Nobody knows why they do what they do. I'll give you an example. When we were building our Apple I's in the garage, we knew exactly what they cost. When we got into a factory in the Apple II days, the accounting had this notion of a standard cost, where you'd kind of set a standard cost, and then at the end of a quarter, you'd adjust it with a variance. And I kept asking, well, why do we do this? And the answer was, well, that's just the way it's done. And after about 6 months of digging into this, what I realized was the reason you do it is because you don't really have good enough controls to know how much it costs, so you guess, and then you fix your guess at the end of the quarter. And the reason you don't know how much it costs is because your information systems aren't good enough. But nobody said it that way. And so later on, when we designed this automated factory for Macintosh, we were able to get rid of a lot of these antiquated concepts and know exactly what something cost to the second.
I mean, so ridiculous, right? But how many? He looked. Imagine being that person saying, yelling at an accountant saying you need to know the cost, and they're like, "We've done this the same way in every company, in mega companies and small companies. You're telling us to do more work. It doesn't work that way, Steve. Right? He doesn't care. He wants to know, and this same concept, these same learnings to the T have been parroted by Jeff Bezos. Also, their whole thing was based off of better logistics, better information systems, better delivery. Because the reality is in this industry, right? Logistics, shipping, manufacturing, that people don't know the prices, or at the time people didn't know the prices down to the part or the piece of raw material, because so much stuff was bought in bulk. I love how he challenged that, and I think that's really smart. And I think it goes back to sort of Elon Musk's first principles thinking as well, and understanding all these different, and if you take it to marketing, right, it goes down to, do you understand how much you're paying for a customer, right? Bare simple. And for, I'd say, probably throughout all of history, people have never known how much they were actually paying for a customer. Being able to understand how much you're paying for the customer allows us to just scale it up. But a lot of companies don't take time to figure out their tracking. A lot of people don't take time to figure out the foundation. And I think this was just a really smart quote. It goes into a lot of sort of what I call billionaire logic, billionaire thinking. All these guys do it the same way. Why don't they teach this in school, right?
To be a mirror of your thought process, to actually learn how to think. In other words, I think the greatest value of learning I think everybody in this country should learn how to program a computer, should learn a computer language, because it teaches you how to think. It's like going to law school. I don't think anybody should be a lawyer, but I think going to law school would actually be useful because it teaches you how to think in a certain way, in the same way that computer programming teaches you in a slightly different way how to think. And so I view computer science as a liberal art. It should be something that everybody takes a year in their life. One of the courses they take is, learning.
I agree. One of the things I did early on was, I sort of agree, right? I believe everybody needs to learn AI now. I don't think coding is necessary anymore now that we have AI. So I would modify that statement and I would say everyone needs to learn how to interact with a computer, how to leverage a computer. If you do not know how to leverage a computer to think like a computer, you're off your rocker, right? What are you doing, right? What I used to learn to think like a computer early on was I took some free classes on, W3 schools, and this was very helpful for me. I dedicated a few weeks. I always had my schoolwork done pretty fast, and I would just go through the tutorials. Right? It's free. A lot of us have free time where we're not doing something productive, right? So that's how I started learning to think like a computer. And although I'm not a programmer, I can think better and more like a computer than I'd say most of my students can. Even, so I'd say it's a big advantage. And learning how to work with AI, right, is a totally new skill. And I encourage everyone to spend time learning Claude Code or Codex, but AI on the terminal, right? And we'll be releasing a new version of Bonfire, which is, I'm literally testing it as we speak, going through testing it on just computer after computer after computer to make sure that we're going to crush it with the next release. Let's go on to the next clip of Steve Jobs. And folks, Do you enjoy it? Have you seen this interview before? Do you like this? Is any of this interesting to you, or is this sort of like, yeah, he's a billionaire, but like I only want information where the rubber meets the road. Like I want to be able to like apply it right after, like launch an ad, or like let me know what you guys find interesting about
It
this
was
stuff.
worth about over $1 million when I was 23, and over $10 million when I was 24, and over $100 million when I was 25. Um,
I want to be clear here. People say, John, why, when you make money, you don't just make more? Why don't you just retire? Why don't you just quit? Why didn't Steve quit when he was at 1 million? Why didn't Steve quit when he was at 10 million? Why didn't he quit when he was 25 at 100 million? If you're just doing it for the money, you're not driven the right way. Let's see what he has to say. I'm going to play that again.
23, and over to get rich. It's very interesting. I was worth about over $1 million when I was 23, and over $10 million when I was 24, and over $100 million when I was 25. And it wasn't that important because I never did it for the money. I think money is a wonderful thing because it enables you to do things. It enables you to invest in ideas that don't have a short-term payback and things like that. But especially at that point in my life, it was not the most important thing. The most important thing was the company, the people, the products we were making, what we were going to enable people to do with these products. So I didn't think about it a great deal. I never sold any stock and just really.
I never did it for the money. What? Why is Steve starting a company, building software, like doing all this work? Not for the money? Like this guy became one of the richest guys in the world. You know? He didn't give it all away. This guy made $10 billion. What do you mean not for the money? Right? It trips people out. You didn't do it for the money. Let me play this quote again. He never sold any stock. Yeah. So what was driving Steve? Right? What was driving Steve if it wasn't the money? Right? Something else. Right? And everyone's got to have that something else that drives them. Or else you're never going to stick through past the 1 million to the 10. If you're doing it for the money, you'll stop when you've got the 1 or the 10 million. If you're doing it for the money, you won't ever fully you'll stop when it's not making money. Right? Steve spent years not making money. So he would have stopped. So you have to have something else that drives you inherently, whether that's your family, whether that's competition, whether that's just what you do, whether that's proving to yourself or proving to your family or proving to somebody else. Hey, what's up, Driftcore? You have to have something else that drives you because if you're, but listen to Steve. You can listen to gurus on YouTube, Alex Becker, Alex Hormozy, Alex Mickle, all these gurus. Why don't people just listen to billionaires? Why are interviews like this getting only a few thousand views? Let's see how many views this got.
It was worth.
Why do interviews like this get 61,000 views? 61,000 views. And I bet you I could find any video of Alex Hormozy or Alex Becker that has more views than an interview, the most raw interview with a billionaire of all time. Why are people not, why are so few people watching this? Is it too long? Well, people aren't even watching clips of this. Why? Right? The best information, isn't the information that's viewed the most, is the reality. The best information isn't the information that is the most popular. Now, there's another key thing here that he said.
And eventually went public and
Was worth about over $1 million when I was 23, and over $10 million when I was 24, and over $100 million when I was 25. And it wasn't that important because I never did it for the money. I think money is a wonderful thing because it enables you to do things. It enables you to invest in ideas that don't have a short-term payback and things.
Boom, boom. Why is money a one? What is the point of money? Right? It is what Steve is saying is I'll quote it for you. It allows you to invest in things that don't have a short-term payback. Why is money important? It allows you to invest in things that don't have a short-term payback, like building a company, building a software, building a building, growing a company, building a family, right? Building a dynasty, building a legacy. Too many people have been brainwashed to think in 15-second clips and purely react to information that is trending. We need to thinking in longer term paybacks. I'm building software right now, right? I'm not showing up, I'm not marketing as hard as I could, right? I'm not I've been teaching people for the last 10 years and I'm not marketing as nearly as hard as I could. I'm not releasing videos. Why? Because I'm building something that is going to create a legacy. I'm trying to become a software developer with AI. I'm building something longer term. And no matter what you're doing, you've got to build a longer term business. I spent 4 years learning trying to get affiliate marketing working so that I could live the rest of my life being able to travel the world, being able to be wherever I want, having very nice house out here in Malibu, being able to spend time with my kids. Everything else stemmed from that 4 years of failure, of embarrassment, of being the black sheep of my family, of not being invited out, losing friends, losing people close to me because they thought I had gone astray. 4 years, right? That was a long-term commitment. And anybody building an internet business, you have to spend at least 6 months on the one thing. What are you selling? Well, spend 6 months every day working towards selling that product, right? But people have a hard time thinking like that. Now, the folks that do, that can only think short-term, that are monkeys to their little blue crystals, just scrolling, those are the people that are going to be weeded out of the workforce. Those are the folks that are going to be weeded out of remote work. And there's lots of great jobs available, you could become an electrician and make a lot of money. You can become a undersea welder and make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. You can, if you just want money, go work on an oil derrick. There's lots of ways to make money very easily just by working a job. I'm here teaching people how to work digitally, right? And if you want to work digitally, you got to be excellent. Okay, let's move on.
9.
I had 3 or 4 people who kept bugging me that I ought to get my rear over to Xerox PARC and see what they were doing. And so I finally did. I went over there, and they were very kind, and they showed me what they were working on. And they showed me really three things. But I was so blinded by the first one that I didn't even really see the other two. One of the things they showed me was object-oriented programming. They showed me that, but I didn't even see that. The other one they showed me was really a computer system. They had over 100 Alto computers, all networked, using email, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't even see that. I was so blinded by the first thing they showed me, which was the graphical user interface. I thought it was the best thing I'd ever seen in my life. Now, remember, it was very flawed. What we saw was incomplete. They'd done a bunch of things wrong, but we didn't know that at the time. It's still, though, they had the germ of the idea was there, and they'd done it very well.
Sorry, my audio was off. All he's saying here is that he is he literally not. I tell people to swipe, steal from the competition, right? Like literally just copy their ads, copy their angle, copy their messaging. What Steve did, Steve literally walked into the building of his competitor. Steve walked into the building of his competitor. He somehow got a meeting. Again, this guy is a master, let's call it manipulator, or, he can weasel his way into any situation. And he used a lot of, and it's one of the reasons why as a marketer, I have a lot of respect for Steve. Steve is an unbelievable marketer, brand man, everything. But he got a meeting at Xerox, walks in, looks at all their stuff, has them explain everything to him. How did he do that, right? Some sort of magic. And then he literally steals their number one concept, which is the graphical user interface, right? It's working with computers in a more beautiful way. And I'd say my big innovation that I'm working on with AI, which has already been done somewhat by OpenClaw, but it's making it so that we get AI on our computer, but we immediately put it on our phones. Okay. Nobody wants to work with. I tell everybody to work with Claude Code and Terminal AI, but the reality is very few people want to. The faster we can get folks, it's overpowered, but the faster we can get folks out of the terminal experience and being able to interact with AI on their computer through their phone, that's where the revolution's going to come. Let's move onwards to the next thing. Why monopolies kill products.
Like with John Scully. John came from PepsiCo, and they at most would change their product, once every 10 years. To them, a new product was like a new size bottle, right? So if you were a product person, you couldn't change the course of that company very much. So who influenced the success of PepsiCo? The sales and marketing people. Therefore, they were the ones that got promoted, and therefore they were the ones that ran the company. Well, for PepsiCo, that might have been okay, but it turns out the same thing can happen in technology companies that get monopolies, like, IBM and Xerox. If you were a product person at IBM or Xerox, so you make a better copy or a better computer. So what? When you have a monopoly market share, the company's not any more successful. So the people that can make the company more successful are sales and marketing people. And they end up running the companies. And the product people get driven out of the decision-making forums. And the companies forget what it means to make great products. Sort of the product sensibility and the product genius that brought them to that monopolistic position gets rotted out by people running these companies who have no conception of a good product.
It's interesting, right? I would say I saw some of this happen on a smaller scale in my own company. I've been teaching folks affiliate marketing, which is the easiest lowest inertia way to make money online. It's also the most competitive way to make money online. And I saw a lot of just the more I got outside of running the business, the more things drifted away from what was actually helping customers become better versions of themselves. There was some level of emotional care and responsibility uh, that was lost as my company expanded, which is one of the reasons, another reason why I leaned very heavily into AI, because I don't think you can force a person, an employee, to care about what they do. I think it has to be innate. And I just figured the easiest way to do this, is AI. I believe AI allows us to expand our capabilities and actualize ourselves if we use it correctly. If we understand how to actually get it on our computer so it can post those Facebook ads, edit those videos, edit those images, create those carousels, and all we have to do is speak to it like a natural human. Let's go on to his next quote. We're going through this. Let me know if I should go faster through the clips with less commentary, or if it's about right, or just play Steve more. Let me know. I love this interview. I could talk about this for ages. I've seen this like 10 times. Frankly, I'm so surprised so few people have seen this interview and so many people have seen like Alex Hormozy or whatever. Let's go onwards.
Confused. Companies get confused. When they start getting bigger, they want to replicate their initial success. And a lot of them, and that disease, I've seen other people get it too. It's the disease of thinking that a really great idea is 90% of the work. And that if you just tell all these other people, here's this great idea, then of course they can go off and make it happen. And the problem with that is that there's just a tremendous amount of craftsmanship in between a great idea and a great product. And as you evolve that great idea, it changes and grows. It never comes out like it starts, because you learn a lot more as you get into the subtleties of it. And you also find there's tremendous trade-offs that you have to make. I mean, there are just certain things you can't make electrons do. There are certain things you can't make plastic do or glass do. And as you get into, or factories do, or robots do. And as you get into all these things, designing a product is keeping 5,000 things in your brain, these concepts, and fitting them all together in kind of continuing to push to fit them together in new and different ways to get what you want. And every day you discover something new that is a new problem or a new opportunity to fit these things together a little differently. And it's that process that is the magic.
So true. I've fallen victim to this, where I think I had a great idea and I could talk to people about it and it would happen. But this last year has been one of those, or I'd say the last 6 months since I got on Claude Code and Terminal AI has been a big wake up call to me, where I'm like, no, I don't have to just tell people what software I want to build, or what I've been trying to build software since, back when I was starting affiliate marketing, right? I failed at building software then. But it's the work, it's the craftsmanship, it's the constant grinding of, and I also love that Steve talks a lot about craftsmanship as it pertains to work. Steve expects a very high quality of work. Too few people I come across in life have any pride in what they actually do. I don't know why. But yes, it is very difficult to build a good product, and I'm going to work on it. Let's see the next quote.
a team of people doing something they really believe in is like when I was a young kid. There was a widowed man that lived up the street, and he was in his 80s. He's a little scary looking, and I got to know him a little bit. I think he might have paid me to mow his lawn or something. And one day he said, "Come on into my garage, I want to show you something." And he pulled out this dusty old rock tumbler. And it was a motor and a coffee can and a little, band between them. And he said, "Come on with me." We went out to the back and we got some rocks, some regular old ugly rocks. And we put them in the can with a little bit of liquid and a little bit of grit powder. And we closed the can up and he turned this motor on. He said, "Come back tomorrow." And his can was making a racket as the stones went around. And I came back the next day and we opened the can and we took out these amazingly beautiful polished rocks. The same common stones that had gone in through rubbing against each other like this, creating a little bit of friction, creating a little bit of noise, had come out these beautiful polished rocks. And that's always been in my mind my metaphor for a team working really hard on something they're passionate about is that it's through the team, through that group of incredibly talented people bumping up against each other, having arguments, having fights sometimes, making some noise, and working together, they polish each other and they polish the ideas, and what comes out.
Absolutely excellent metaphor. There's nothing I can really say about that except that I absolutely agree. And that folks who are trying to seek no conflicts, no problems, no failure, no rubbing, no grinding up against each other, no battles, right? That's weak. You're not going to become a diamond unless you go through the rock tumbler and you get chipped off and you even lose little parts of yourself along the way to get down to that core diamond hard part of the rock, right? So great book.
In software, and it used to be the case in hardware too, the difference between average and the best is 50 to 1, maybe 100 to 1.
Easy.
Okay? Yeah. Very few things in life are like this, but what I was lucky enough to spend my life in is like this. And so I've built a lot of my success off finding these truly gifted people and not settling for B and C players, but really going for the A players. And I found something. I found that when you get enough A players together, when you go through the incredible work to find 5 of these A players, they really like working with each other because they've never had a chance to do that before. And they don't want to work with B and C players, and so it becomes self-policing, and they only want to hire more A players. And so you build up these pockets of A players, and it propagates. And that...
This is true. I've found this time and again, people will take lower salaries. The best workers will actually take lower salaries just to work with something that stimulates their brain or to work with a team that has a purpose, that has a mission, rather than just working a desk job. And part of working with A players as well is about demanding excellence from yourself and having high standards for yourself, which Steve is known for very much so. Let's keep going.
And I'm also one of these people that I don't really care about being right, I just care about success. So you'll find a lot of people that will tell you that I had a very strong opinion and they presented evidence to the contrary, and 5 minutes later I completely changed my mind. Because I'm like that. I don't mind being wrong. And I'll admit that I'm wrong a lot. It doesn't really matter to me too much. What matters to me is that we do the right thing.
So how and why?
What matters to him is that they win, right? So, I'm going to skip over this one. This one's about John Scully. It's a bit more business related. How this guy sort of collapsed his business. Let's see. Now, this interview was done when Apple was actually dying. You know, this interview was during the period where Steve Jobs had sold his wilderness years. So he had been fired from Apple, and he was 40 years old, right? Let's... Now, I think this is a funny quote. They're like the Japanese, they keep coming.
Microsoft's Orbit was made possible by a Saturn V booster called IBM. And I know Bill would get upset with me for saying this, but of course it was true. Mm-hmm. And much to Bill and Microsoft's credit, they used that fantastic opportunity to create more opportunity for themselves. Most people don't remember, but until 1984 with the Mac, Microsoft was not in the applications business. It was dominated by Lotus. And Microsoft took a big gamble to write for the Mac. And they came out with applications that were terrible. But they kept at it, and they made them better, and eventually they dominated the Macintosh application market and then used a springboard of Windows to get into the PC market with those same applications. And now they dominate the applications in the PC space too. So they have two characteristics. I think they're very strong opportunists, and I don't mean that in a bad way. And two, they're like the Japanese. They just keep on coming. Now, they were able to do that because of the revenue stream from the IBM deal. But not.
And now this is some bit of sort of technology lore here. But what's interesting is the context here is that Microsoft, Bill Gates, you know, who was the richest man in the world for quite a long time, and perhaps still is, his mom got him a deal with the biggest, to be the sole supplier of software to the biggest computer hardware manufacturer in the world at the time. Sort of baked, you know, Bill Gates had a sort of baked in opportunity, and there, you know, understanding how, you know, how successful, these are things that Bill Gates would, you know, you wouldn't hear on the internet about Bill Gates. Oh, he started off as a app developer for Apple, you know. His mom got him a deal with the biggest computer company. I think it's good to understand these sorts of things when you're looking at who to take influence from, right? I could sit here watching Bill Gates interviews all day and say, this is the smartest man in the world, he's a billionaire, we should be listening to him. I wouldn't be wrong, but I think it's better to listen to people like Steve Jobs who are self-made or more self-made than someone like Bill Gates, whose mom got him his first big deal. And now Bill Gates is obviously tenacious, competitive, all these things. But for me, I always like watching people who went from 0 to 1 totally on their own, or 0 to 1 billion. Let's keep going, but I think it's just important context to keep in mind. Microsoft has no taste. Steve is super competitive against his competitors. I think this is funny, basically. His quote. He attacks Microsoft.
The only problem with Microsoft is they just have no taste. They have absolutely no taste. And what that means is, I don't mean that in a small way, I mean that in a big way. In the sense that they don't think of original ideas, and they don't bring much culture into their product. And you say, well, why is that important? Well, you know, proportionally spaced fonts come from typesetting and beautiful books. That's where one gets the idea. If it weren't for the Mac, they would never have that in their products. And so I guess I am saddened, not by Microsoft's success. I have no problem with their success. They've earned their success, for the most part. I have a problem with the fact that they just make really third-rate products. Their products have no spirit to them. Their products have no sort of spirit of enlightenment about them. They are very pedestrian. And the sad part is that most customers don't.
That's great. That's some great roasting right there. Pedestrian, no taste, no class, and it's true, right? And I think it also goes to show, look, you don't have to think of original ideas to make a lot of money or become the richest person in the world. You can literally become the richest person in the world with the best-selling software everywhere without original ideas, without creativity. Microsoft copied most of their stuff from Apple and what have you. So I think it's pretty funny, but I also agree with Steve in the sense that the humanity, the humanness, the craftsmanship touch to a lot of things on the internet. First off, I've seen, it's going away, right? We have, in for mass production, for, a lot of just people not caring about their jobs from the shift to digital work, and I'm talking about people who work for corporations, you have all these remote workers who don't care about what they're doing. Of course, they're going to put out third-rate crap, so I don't know, but where are digital craftspeople, right? And, I encourage folks to become good at a skill, right? I think skill and craftsmanship and humanity are really good things. And I think it's something that Steve leaned a lot into, and I hope to lean into with the development of the software that I've been building. And I'm really excited for anybody who's part of my community, right? There's links down below. We're going to have a new software release, hopefully by the end of this week. I'm going to get right back to testing right after this, but I figured I'd take some time today to go through this interview with all y'all. I'm trying to get myself interfacing with the world and not just being in my cave. Let's go into, we have a question. And I actually made my first 10K because of your course. Guys, let's get some reactions going in the chat. Come on. Guys, come on. Where are the reactions in the chat? That's great. Congratulations, Josh, on making your first internet 10K. Feels a lot better when you're making it on the internet, right? Than when it's just, when you're sleeping than when you're going to a job. And I actually made my first 10K because of your course. I was just wondering, I hear a mix of West Coast and Midwest accent. Yeah, so I grew up here in Los Angeles, but my family is from, my dad's side is Italian, from Indiana, sort of like steel mill country. So, my grandpa, he worked in the steel mills, where they press steel and, all the steel companies shut down, I think, in the U.S. But so, yeah, my family emigrated from northern Italy, right? Near Vicenza. And then my mom's side of the family, they're from Chicago. And they're all out in the suburbs now. I have a big family there. They're all Irish. And they came from, I forget which county they came from in Ireland, but we're more connected to our Italian family. We still visit our Italian side of our family out in Italy. And even though we've had generations separating us, and we've had some of our Italian family from Italy actually move to the U.S. So, yeah, I guess my parents are from the Midwest. So I guess I have a bit of an accent. I didn't know that, but yep. You sound very confident. Why do you think you have this mix of American accents? Because my parents were from the Midwest and I'm from California. I was born and raised in California, so that would explain that. Hopefully that makes sense.
Don't have a lot of that spirit either. But the way that we're going to ratchet up our species is to take the best and to spread it around to everybody so that everybody grows up with better things and starts to understand the subtlety of these better things. And Microsoft's just, it's McDonald's. So that's what saddens me. Not that Microsoft has won, but that...
Folks, you're going to see some serious attack posts from me soon on OpenClaw because I'm here charging $5,000 for software, right? And OpenClaw's charging nothing. How could I compete? OpenClaw you connect through your phone, Bonfire you connect through your phone. Folks, I'm going to destroy OpenClaw in a series, probably of webinars, sometime soon.
American, and it measured the efficiency of locomotion for various species on the planet. So for, bears and chimpanzees and raccoons and birds.
This is a great story from Steve.
To this industry.
Yeah. It's another one of those things that it's obvious once it happens. But 5 years ago, who would have guessed?
Right. That's right. Yeah. Isn't this a wonderful place we live in?
I was keen to know about Steve's passion. What drove him?
I read an article when I was very young in Scientific American, and it measured the efficiency of locomotion for various species on the planet. So for, bears and chimpanzees and raccoons and birds and fish, how many kilocalories per kilometer did they spend to move? And humans were measured too. And the condor won. It was the most efficient. And mankind, the crown of creation, came in with a rather unimpressive showing about a third of the way down the list. But somebody there had the brilliance to test a human riding a bicycle. Blew away the condor, all the way off the charts. And I remember this really had an impact on me. I really remember this, that humans are tool builders, and we build tools that can dramatically amplify our innate human abilities. And to me, we actually ran an ad like this very early at Apple, that the personal computer was the bicycle of the mind. And I believe that with every bone in my body,
The computer is the bicycle of the mind. How do we amplify ourselves? We amplify ourselves with the computer, but going a step further, it's our computer with AI on it. That's just the first principle. The more we can connect ourselves to a computer and allow the computer, the more we will become actualized. The more closely you can connect yourself with the computer, the more you will actualize yourself. And we're getting to a point where AI, the key thing around why AI sucks right now is because it is not connected. It is not connected to your phone. It is not connected to your GPU. It is not connected to your monitors and your hardware environment, your speakers, your microphones. It is not connected in a way that it can sense and manipulate all of these pieces of hardware like an appendage, like a natural appendage of itself. It is not naturally connected to your Facebook account, your Instagram account, all these things. And the more we can naturally connect our computers to the rest of our environment, the closer we get to some really crazy sci-fi stuff. And, I'm going to say it here, but 5 years from now, it's going to be obvious, right? So.
Ultimately, it comes down to taste. It comes down to taste. It comes down to trying to expose yourself to the best things that humans have done, and then try to bring those things in to what you're doing. I mean, Picasso had a saying, he said, good artists copy, great artists steal. And we have, always been shameless about stealing great ideas. And I think part of what made the Macintosh great was that the people working on it were musicians and poets and artists and zoologists and historians who also happened to be the best computer scientists in the world. But if it hadn't been for computer science, these people would have all been, doing amazing things in life and other fields.
I tell my students all the time, copy what works. Copy what works. Copy what works. White people say, I don't want to copy. I feel like I'm a bad person. Steve's always been shameless about stealing great ideas. Why not you, right? So there we go. That's the interview. I hope folks enjoyed it. If you want some of the clips here, um, you can check out. We have some, I don't know. AI has supposedly created some affiliate and Clipper resources here. I didn't check them out, but I mean, what or anything here? No. So you can take what you want from here, but I hope you guys enjoyed that. I love these interviews. You know, this is how I learn. You know, I find long form interviews. I want rawness. I don't want a 15-second TikTok. I don't want a 15-minute Alex Hormozy video. I want a I want a 1.5 hour interview where somebody is being real and raw and somebody who's been there and is highly experienced, you know, and very rich. And I think this is the best interview of all time. But remember, folks, this didn't get a lot of views. My video won't get a lot of views. Steve's video did not get a lot of views. Guys, throw in some reactions there. Let's freaking go. Steve's video didn't get a lot of views, only like 10,000 or so. Yet this is one of the smartest people of all time who built one of the best companies of all time. One of the biggest companies in the world. So we can't look at views or what is pushed on us as the barometer for what is good or what is right or what is, you know, what is even correct. We have to understand that we have to make our own choices in this new economy. What is being pushed on us through social media is not meant to make you a better person, more successful, or any of the above. Now, I've shifted from being an educator to, you know, I'm working on this shift to being a software developer. Yet I still have an audience, so I'm still going to show up and do all of this stuff. But, you know, and I love sharing with people, frankly, and I live in the middle of the mountains alone, you know, and it's all old people around me. You know, it's all like, everyone on my street is like 80 plus. Malibu's like a retirement community, folks. But it's because young people can't afford to live out here as much. So I hope everybody enjoyed this session. Thank you. Wolf Warrior, yeah, good to see you, Steve. Yeah, Steve, this is the best interview ever of Steve Jobs, and it's called Steve Jobs, The Lost Interview, and it's an absolute treasure. And I'm happy you guys stayed around and got motivated this morning. Folks, all the best. Make sure you subscribe, you like, you enable all notifications, join my community, get our software for doing your marketing, you know, everything, websites, videos, images, editing, posting. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. I believe we're doing a webinar. And for my students, I'll see you on our weekly Bonfire Terminal onboarding session at 1 o'clock Pacific today. Good seeing everyone. All the best. Peace.